the big iconic mask that you were talking about there, Matt, and he's gone for this bandana look. I'm guessing maybe a little bit. This was also sorry to cut you off there, Matt, but this was also very WCW, like that entrance, the rampway where it led on straight onto the ring. That's something that we actually saw in a TNA quite a lot. They did that a lot. And here you can see the trophy that he's picking up. And now both these guys basically were involved in matches earlier on in the night, and basically they've both managed to get to the finals. And now we see Sting again, slightly different. You know, it's the cool thing about Sting, a bit like the Warrior, kind of chopped and changed his attire a lot, even though the paint remained and stuff like that. I kind of always thought that was cool for him. As we see now, another battle. Sting almost looks like his paint's already coming off, let alone he's not even got in the ring. But again, he would have been wrestling a few times that night as well. But it was interesting here because this Starrcade, now this was one of the first ones that they did this on, like this tournament style, concept, shall we say. But again, I suppose WrestleMania did it as well at WrestleMania 4. Sort of for their championship as well, but this whole concept really come about. That I don't remember them doing this ever again, so I think that's probably going to tell you a lot about how well this was received and went down. But
didn't take off like King of the Ring then.
No. So now we see the second match between these two guys as Vader literally down on one knee. Almost looks like he's going to propose here. That's what we've got.
So this is kind of a tournament situation. It isn't really like they're giving us a proper rematch, is it? It just seems like coincidence and fate has brought them together again.
Yeah, I mean, they are in the finals at Starrcade, so I'm guessing like that. I think like the broad storyline going into this was these two guys. I think it was like kind of inevitable that they would probably face each other at some point through it. And the story was told and like the way it was, and then they both end up getting to the finals of this whole thing. But yeah, you're right. I don't think this is not your classic sort of back-to-back match. But I think, like I said before, I think a lot of these trilogies back then anyway, the older ones, are going to be ones that probably are not booked to kind of have the trilogy. It's probably more about feel and the demand for them, which is a lot different to today's kind of market that we often see nowadays. As we see pretty much Vader shrugging off attempts here from Stinger.
Yeah, that's some intimidation there. That you can just punch him in the face. Doesn't matter.
Scoops him up and just slams him down again. So it looks like they're much more going for the big man style again, worker. But Sting's really good at playing that because the thing about Sting is he's not exactly a small guy, but he's very good at like. This is what sometimes I know a lot of people have frustrations about with Roman Reigns, is they say he doesn't work like a babyface. I think if I was like coaching Roman Reigns, I'd say like watch a lot of Sting matches to see how a babyface works, because he was really good at it. Because Sting wasn't a small guy, but he made you feel for him. Like you kind of nurtured him in a lot of these matches. Cool. Straight over.
Right on those steel
Vader's just
cables.
like, yeah, come on and what?
Be the king of the cable now.
Yeah. Now, Starrcade, Matt, was you? Did you ever watch any of the Starrcade pay-per-views at all?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I watched a fair few of them.
Yeah.
It was booked as the one to see, I suppose, if you was going to see a WCW kind of event back then. This was the one to watch out for. But this one, no, I did not remember this. I mean, again, we're still in '92, so still a bit before my time. So, it's always fun looking back on these things, though, because it seems like WCW did know what they was doing. I mean, the matches that were pretty good back then. Even though you said WWF was winning at that time, I do think they were trying hard to sort of catch up.
Yeah, I mean, to put this in some sort of perspective, because I know people will be like, where were WWE? Well, it was about this time where WWE started to really budget down, because we were going into WrestleMania 9 come March, Matt. So you know how that looked. With obviously Hogan was pretty much on his way out, but they were kind of just changing themselves up as well. But they were, I think, in terms of the pace, WCW definitely had the faster pace, because WrestleMania 8 we still had Hogan working on top. It was very different. There's Vader losing his mask, Matt. What do you make of that? That
hairdo. Yeah, that's what it makes him. What was he thinking when he got that done? Go to the barbers and go, yeah, just go right down the middle, thanks.
Yeah, kind of exposes it here a lot, doesn't it? Whoa. But fans were so pro Sting here. It must have been hard for him to suddenly decide, like, I need to change it up and go with it. But he was brave to do it, because a lot of other guys, Matt, how many guys do we see, they live on that gimmick forever and they never get away from it? But Sting was brave enough to do it.
It is strange. Like we spoke about the Warrior a little bit beforehand, and they did partner. But it's kind of strange seeing how similar their characters kind of were, because both chose the face paint kind of route, and they're beating on their chest, and when they get fired up, But then one went to an extreme, and I think Sting, he had the better kind of all-in package that he was. He could wrestle, he could talk, he could do it all. I feel like Warrior was a little bit limited, to the size that he was. I know
a lot of people say like it was a shame that Sting never got worked for Vince McMahon. I kind of feel like this is the Sting that would have benefited from WWF. Like if this Sting was in WWF, I think the sky would have been the limit for this guy, because I think he would have had that all-round thing. He would have had the character and be able to pull off good matches. To where they were going at the time. But this is the Sting that would have benefited from it. I know a lot of people always look at the Crow Sting and put him up against Undertaker all the time, but like, where'd you go after that? I think this is the Sting that would have benefited from around this sort of time in WWF. Would have been a mega star for sure at that time.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think that would have been brilliant. I mean, when I look back at this kind of thing, I do have those kind of thoughts in my head, like what if he was fighting the Macho Man in WWF?
Yeah.
Or what if he was fighting Jake the Snake?
Yeah.
All these kind of matches that would have been great. And you see that in the Warrior, because it seems like, was the Warrior just an answer to a question that was posed by Sting, because Sting was so successful in WCW?
Yeah, almost. That was a great little suplex there off the second rope, by the way, that he did. As he now goes into the Scorpion Deathlock. What did you make of the Deathlock? Because obviously we're both Bret Hart fans, sharpshooter. Bret says it is very different the way he sits on it and lays on it compared to him.
He uses the wrong arm.
But I never really had a problem with it. I didn't really think about it too much, to be honest with you. And by this point, Sting was, like, as much as I'm a Bret fan, Sting was much more accomplished as a star than Bret was at this time. Bret was champion by now. He'd beaten Ric Flair, because Ric Flair wasn't in WCW at this point, Matt. I think that's worth pointing out here. This would have been like the first Starrcade without Ric Flair. It's kind of like WWE without Hulk Hogan for the first time at WrestleMania 10. Kind of had that big missing gap in it. So we had Flair instead over with the WWE at this time. But he shortly would come back, obviously, to the WCW. But that run was very short-lived. As we've seen now, Sting literally throw himself back in there like he's just thrown his body in. It's that same referee again, by the way. I'm starting to feel that he might get the last start. I'm guessing we might see him 3 times here.
I guess that's like another thing. We spoke about how well Sting does reinvent himself. Whereas like the Scorpion Deathlock was very effective, you always need that kind of impact instant finisher, don't you? So it was good when he sort of done the Stinger Death Drop, when he started getting that involved. That was a further evolution of the character. So I do like it when a wrestler can keep on doing that. It's kind of like Jericho, isn't it? When he keeps on reinventing his finishing move and that, and for like how decades, you can still be fresh. You can just keep reinventing yourself, and it's a kind of a shame. Sting got the injury he kind of did towards the end of his career, because I'm sure he still had some good matches left in him.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was a shame. The whole thing was a shame, especially in the WWE, the matches that he did get, that's for sure, in the end of it.
You know what else? I can't believe how late into his career Vader worked. This guy, what a machine. He loved wrestling. If someone said, it was bad for you, he didn't care. He just loved it so much.
Well, this is probably like one of the first times as well I've seen Vader work without the mask for the majority of the match. I'll say as well. Another reaction. Shit.
And I went into that cover a bit too deep.
That scene there behind, the set they've got there for Starrcade, so classic with the tinsel stuff that they used to put up. It's almost like they didn't quite know if they were a wrestling company or a sports company. Like they were kind of in between here a lot, I felt, and they kind of didn't know. They didn't really have an identity at this point. I feel like they were coming out of the NWA, which was very sport given, and then into this entertainment world with Ted Turner. The other thing I used to really be very different. Like, you knew if you was watching the WCW show and you knew if you was watching the WWE show. It's very easy. The fans, they used to really dim the lights down a lot, whereas WWE is all about really opening it up a lot. If you look in the background, just there, you can barely see anybody. And that was just something WCW used to do quite a lot, but it was very easy. Like, I know they go, well, we've got two different brands like Raw and SmackDown, but it looks all the same to me. But here you can really tell the difference, the distinction. You'd know what you were watching if you switched over. What exactly, what show you were watching.
I do like the kind of intensity they put on their faces. Like, even with that backslide, he was like, "Oh, you almost got me." He's like, the look on Vader's face was like, "That was like a cheap move, a dirty, underhanded tactic, trying to out wrestle me."
Oh, I could have gone there. You wouldn't want to be underneath that, that's for sure.
It definitely looks like every time he comes into a match, he just wants to fight. It's not about wrestling.
You see those punches there from Vader. They're really good, I've got to say, for the time. A lot of the punches in WWF look really silly at the time. I don't know why they did it, but they always used to like hit the floor as they were doing it and silly things like that. It used to really bug me out. But Vader's punches look pretty legit.
Or the old punching with the stamp at the same time.
Yeah. It's kind of something that was just done, wasn't it, back then? God.
Ooh, that was a nice reversal.
Yeah. And again, I want to point out the fans here, very, very mixed demographic that we have here. Just even on that front row, it's like there's a real mixture of people. Like there's ladies, there's middle-aged men just watching it. It's a very interesting, and I'm sure if you put this up against WWF at this time, very different. I think WWF really had probably what I would say the younger portion of the audience in their pocket.
Yeah, I've got to say, I can't remember last time I saw an old granny at a WWE event.
I love these shots here from Vader. It looks like he's really going for it. Like, if you just switched this on and nobody really knew what they were watching, I think it's... this is the sort of stuff I would kind of be happily to show my friends that didn't know wrestling, but a lot of the stuff today I kind of hold my head in shame and I switch it off as quickly as I can, because you never know what's going to happen. But Vader's style, I mean, I know people say, strong style, but Vader's got a pretty stiff, strong style here I've seen in this last couple of matches. He definitely wasn't doing this stuff in WWE, Matt, I've got to say.
No.
Almost, it is kind of weird, but it's almost like looking at a different guy in this. Like he's